So I wanted to talk about a topic called going going against your natural tendencies. And what I mean by natural tendencies is like where you would where you'd kind of naturally be inclined to go. So like if you're an aggressive personality, that might be doing the aggressive thing. If you're like risk taker versus not risk taker, if you're someone who doesn't like to take a lot of risk and you're pretty risk averse, then that would be not going towards risk. And if you're someone who takes a lot of risk, then your natural tendency would be to try and go towards risk. So I wanted to make the point, and it was something very important that I learned, that when you go towards your natural tendency, a lot of the time it kind of holds you back or it messes you up, versus if you didn't head towards your natural tendency. What I've come to learn is that, and I've learned this from different books, that when you go towards your natural tendency, you're going towards, if you go too much towards your natural tendency, you go towards a certain extreme, and and inevitably it kind of like like it like kind of can f you up, and it can hold you back and kind of mess you up really bad. And people's like biggest weaknesses are on like the opposite of like their biggest strengths. So if you're really good at taking risk and being aggressive and being I don't know, like an alpha male, in that like you go and you set goals and you conquer them and crush them and stuff, then you're weak points are on the other side of that. So there are things that you naturally wouldn't tend towards. So like for someone, this was my thing, was that if you're like unconventional and you're a business type, then your natural tendency is to go towards the unconventional and to shy away from, and not just shy away, but like really be almost sternly against um, like anything that was conformity, or that's like regular school, or a regular job, or other things like that. But I came to learn that when it's your natural tendency to go against those things, you can do a lot from learning from those things for a while. So like getting the regular job, going and staying in school and completing school, it was very important, and I learned it from my mentor, that like if you can learn all early on to do the things that you don't want to do the things that you suck at, do the things that aren't fun, and do the things that naturally don't come to you naturally at all, like you really suck at naturally, and it's not your tendency naturally is to do the opposite. If you could kind of do those things, they would help you in your main field, and they would later on help you excel at the things that you were naturally good at. um, so lessons of this are like a lot of people will be really into business, they want to start their own business, they're unconventional, and they don't want to stay in school, and school is bullshit and all that, and they feel that way, and then they go and they go and they quit their day job, or they quit college, and they drop out, and then they're like, okay, I'm going to start my business. But what ends up holding them back in business is that same discipline, that maybe like if they stayed in school, they if they maybe they hated school, and maybe school, like, yeah, you don't learn anything practical or real world or anything that you'll use in your life potentially, but while they were in school, maybe they would learn the skills of, like turning in assignments on time, and learn time management, learn to um, kind of work with others and do group work, and meet deadlines and do things a certain way. And they'd learn a variety of things that I mean, there would be a lot of things that they didn't learn from like um, the regular work or the regular job or school. But then there would also be a lot of things that they kind of like that they did learn from doing school, that they could apply to their business if they stuck in it. And the point kind of with it is that like it wasn't their natural tendency to be there. My bad, I'm like distracted. But it wasn't their natural tendency to be there and do that. But then when they did like stay there and go and do that, it I mean, it ended up being a good thing. And that's the thing. And you'll find that like you can go sort of too far the other way, but you kind of can't. Like the extreme, like what can f you up the most is going towards your natural tendency too much, going towards your extreme too much, because you can push that to an extreme. If you're the opposite, like you'll have trouble pushing it to the extreme because it's not in your nature, if that makes sense. So like if you're naturally an entrepreneur, you're naturally unconventional, you're naturally like a rebel or a rule breaker, and that's your natural tendency, you're not going, like, even if you stay in school, you complete, you get your degree and all of that, like, your natural tendencies will be your natural tendencies no matter how you change or how you grow as a person. Like those strengths or those tendencies that you have, they'd be pretty set from the time you were a kid. And you would find that you wouldn't have a lot of trouble, like, oh, like you're so like addicted to school, and you, I mean, all you want to do is study, and you're too much into school and too much into like the regular job and stuff. You wouldn't find that even if you got good at the stuff that you naturally weren't good at, you wouldn't find that they suddenly become their strength, your strengths wouldn't change, and your natural tendencies wouldn't really change. So but the value is learning them, because if you don't, then you wouldn't be balanced enough, and you'd be just focusing on the things that you were good at, and not much else. To do good in business or in your career or in whatever skill or niche takes some of doing like the things that you like to do, but it takes doing a lot of things that you don't want to do and you don't like to do and that suck and that you don't enjoy. But like it has to get done, and someone has to do them. And then like when you start to do them, like maybe at some point you can sort of like them, um, but I mean it's a chore and it's still work and it's not fun or easy or the most enjoyable thing, but it needs to get done. And there just are things like that, like with lifting and powerlifting, that's kind of like, um, I don't know, like certain exercises that you have to do, boring accessory work that no one wants to do. You know, they want to do their heavy lifts and they go home, but it's the boring stuff, like the boring accessory work or the boring mobility or going to bed on time, and like things that you don't like to do, and doing those things consistently too, that like really makes a champion and really makes someone stand out. Um, so yeah, I think I'll keep this like a shorter video, but it's something that's true. I could talk on the topic of school like another time, because that was like a huge one that I learned from a mentor, that it was important for me to stay and complete and get my degree when most people weren't. But just in general, I'll say that yeah, it's good to go against your natural tendencies and to not follow your natural tendencies to an extreme, but to be more balanced. Because if you are, then you can kind of make it in both worlds, and you can learn from the things that you're not naturally good at. You can learn from the personality traits and the philosophies and the tendencies that are alternate to what you would naturally be or have or think, you know, or do. Um, when you can learn the alternate, and then you can really accept any reality, and you can learn different theories which like you maybe completely disagree with, but you can go out of your way to learn them and experience them. That creates a person who's well-rounded, you know, and it creates a much more deep-seated, um, I don't know, like a knowledge in like what you believe in and don't believe in, and why you might believe in that thing or not believe in that thing. Um, and I just think that anyone who has gone on to do great things really has had to figure out what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what their gifts are, and natural abilities are, and what their natural tendencies are, and then kind of from there work with what they could do and account for what they weren't as naturally good at, either by getting a little better themselves at it or finding unconventional ways to do it that fit their personality, but were like different ways of doing those things, or by partnering with people who were strong at the things that they were weak at, so that they didn't really have to get that good at them. All of those different methods work, but it is important and critical to do the things that you naturally aren't good at and naturally kind of suck at, and yeah, so that's kind of vague, but it's maybe kind of general, but it's something I was kind of thinking about. You and the biggest lesson, the biggest takeaway that I can say is that just don't follow your natural extremes to the extremist point, you know? It's very important to learn balance. If your natural tendency is to always say F it and let's throw more weight on the bar and like go for it and grind, you'll learn a lot from learning to be more balanced, learning to train submaximally, learning to keep a few reps in the tank and to not grind for PRs all the time and to hold reps in the tank maybe a lot of the time or most of the time, because your natural tendency and your natural strength will to be to say F it and go for it. And similarly, if your natural tendency is to be really conservative and to keep reps in the tank and to not go for the extra weight, not go heavier, sometimes you'll learn from learning the alternate of your natural tendency, which is to go for it, which is to go for the heavyweight and do say F it and kind of try and crush the weight, because it's your natural tendency to try and do the opposite, you know? And there's just so much to learn from doing and working towards the things that you wouldn't naturally do. So those are just kind of my thoughts on that subject, and I think it's something that's not talked about enough, but it's interesting and it's sort of important, I think.